Hi, Ollie.
Hi everyone. Hi Marcos. Nice to be here again.
Likewise. Okay, so this time we're just going to do a short Q&A episode. So this is we're trying this new thing out where anyone puts any interesting questions in the comments, we will try and address them in this way, hopefully for the benefit of the questioner and others. So the question that we had was from a video we did a while ago, actually, called Sagittarius Power Plants. And this was a question by a subscriber called Amanita Woodrose. And they wrote, trying to wrap my head around the concept of bitters being hot in Western energetics. We are always taught that they are cooling unless an aromatic bitter. Is this traditional Chinese medicine merging with Western modern herbalism? So I think we should address that from both a herbal medicine point of view and from an astrological point of view as well, because that's what this channel is
Definitely,
about. So
definitely.
any thoughts, Ollie, to kick off?
Well, my first thought was this was something that really bothered me when I did my trading. So I'm with you on that one, and I hope I have solved it to my satisfaction. I think it's also interesting that there is a tendency in modern herbalism to people to mix and match their theory sets, as it were, which is great because I'm all for you using the useful tools. But also, what maybe some people don't realize, the Western medicine and its humoral and astrological background is complete in itself. And you do sometimes run up against these things that they doesn't necessarily mesh with traditional Chinese medicine or indeed Ayurveda or whatever. I mean, again, traditional Western herbal medicine astrological theory is probably nearer to Ayurveda, and which sits between that and TCM. I probably don't know enough
Mm.
about TCM to say that specifically. But yeah, this is one of the ones that is very interesting, and it's all about, well, the where well, it's where to start. I think the best place to start is the role that digestion plays in Western herbal medicine and the primacy that's given a digestive file, the archaeus,
Agreed.
is given in Western traditional Western medicine.
Can I
Go
start
on.
with this, Ollie? Because you know this is a long-term hobby horse of mine,
I
right?
do, I do. Go on.
Yes, yes, yes. So I mean this I call it sort of like mixing toys between different toy boxes when you haven't really learned how to play with the toys in the box that you're using. And I feel like a lot of, as you've mentioned, a lot of authors, not a lot, some authors really have muddied the waters here by using so-called energetics from Chinese medicine with Western herbs and vice versa. And I think similarly to you, I have no problem with innovation and no problem with people collaging things from different traditions, as long as you know that is what you are doing and you
Yes.
declare that openly. I think it just creates confusion otherwise when people don't. So anyway, the TLDR here is that I think Chinese medicine and Western herbal medicine have a different, I don't know if I'm going to use the word right, but rubric is not quite the right word, but they have a different foundation for where their energetics, so
Yeah.
called, I really don't like that word, but where their thinking comes from.
Yeah.
Because in Chinese medicine, I feel that what they're looking at is the end point of how a herbal treatment affects the organism. Whereas in traditional Western herbal medicine, they're looking very much at what happens immediately when you give a medicine and specifically to its effect on, as you mentioned, digestion. Thus, you find that in Western traditional energetics, ugh, I'm cringing as I say it, but in traditional Western herbal medicine, sorry, anyone who likes the word energetics, you feel free, it's fine. But I just have a personal. It's a bit like nails down a chalkboard for me, but whatever. So anyone who likes the traditional Western idea is that bitter herbs were bitter because the bitter taste was thought to be analogous to bile, which helps digestion, and bitters stimulate appetite. So in Western medicine, it was like they stimulated the digestive fire. They got your appetite going and help you digest food. Ergo, bitter was like bile, was like hot, because it increased appetite and the capacity to digest food by stoking the digestive fire. In TCM, bitter was often, not always, we'll get onto the distinction that Amanita Woodrose mentioned there, which is about the difference between aromatic bitters and other bitters, which is the nuance. But bitter in Chinese medicine was often regarded as cooling. And this is because they looked at the end point. When you give somebody a bitter, yes, it stimulates digestion, increases appetite, and yada yada, but it also eventually it can, a lot of bitters have a temperature lowering effect. Now, this may be by the mechanism of drawing more blood to the stomach. I've heard that said. I think that is probably a little simplistic, but whatever. It's a good way of visualizing it, I suppose, empirically, and then experientially or whatever. It's a good analogy. And then, although I suspect it's not literally true, and a lot of bitter principles might turn out to be alkaloids or sesquiterpene lactones or whatnot, with specific pharmacological effects that often are, in practice, for one reason or another, febrifuge. They lower fevers. So, bitter plants often have this fever lowering, ultimately cooling activity. Now, here is the place where we can square the circle and hopefully not add to your confusion, but clear it up, Amanita Woodrose, which is where we get to the differentiation between aromatic bitters and ordinary bitters. Aromatic bitters were bitter plants which were truly hot. So truly hot. So those would be pungent, and they would be regarded as heating in both traditions, because so you'd have your bitters in TCM that are aromatic, like calamus root or ginger, which would be to some degree or other heating. Now, these could still end up having a net cooling effect, but they would be heating in that they would increase circulation and the sense of heat. So in Chinese medicine, they give these things categories like things that would open the exterior. In other words, make you sweat, and therefore they may cool you down, but they still have this circulation enhancing effect. So that would be an aromatic bitter. And in the Western medicine, you'd have these aromatic bitters. In Western medicine, ordinary bitters, like really bitter plants like wormwood or gentian, would be thought of as still hot because of that bitter action on the digestive system, but they were described as choleretics, which means herbs that increase the output of bile. In traditional humoral physiology, bile was seen as a very heating humor, and when you expel it, it has a net cooling effect on the body. So this is where the circle is squared a little bit, because a lot of the traditional Western bitters, although regarded as hot because of their action in turning up the digestive fire, Western primary focuses on their immediate effect and their effect on digestion particularly, they have this net cooling effect by expelling choler. Their ultimate effect is that they literally make you expel bile and poo a bit more, which might make you get rid of a few more quote unquote toxins, another fluffy word I don't like, but they might help you get rid of a lot of microbial byproducts that you don't want in the gut, for example, and thereby lower inflammation. So choleretics, they expel heat. So it's the difference in where you're looking in the process. TCM focuses on the end point, and Western traditional medicine focuses more on the immediate and on the digestion. And that is the source of a lot of confusion. Like I've seen books describing mint as being cooling. And no, in Western tradition, it was a heating herb. In Chinese medicine, it's a cooling herb. So yeah, I mean, any extra thoughts on that one, Ollie? I've gone off.
No, I mean, I quite agree with you. And I mean, yeah, I mean, the classic one, I don't know if is elderflower, which is like, it's a warming herb, but it's warming because, that warming then cools you down because it makes you sweat, sort of thing. It breaks the fever.
Diaphoretic.
I don't know what it is in TCM because I don't know anything about that, but it might well be a herb in that. But
yeah, but that's
it's cooling through warming sort of thing.
Elderflower is a great example, because it's not bitter, but as you said, not particularly anyway, it's slightly perhaps, but it was traditionally said, I think, to be hot and dry in the second degree.
That's right, yes.
And it would purge both phlegm and choler. because it would purge the phlegm by being heating and helping to disperse phlegm, which it absolutely does, but it would purge choler by means of making you sweat a little bit. So the Western tradition was much more sophisticated than people. It was no less sophisticated in many ways than the traditional
So,
Chinese medicine system.
Marcos, where is now, because my memory is so, and I can't lay my hands on the book at the moment,
Mm,
there's a chapter at the end of Culpeper where he goes through all what the various degrees of heat mean. Um,
okay.
and the commentary on Garland, is it?
Yes, he does. It's right. It's you need the. I'll repeat
Proper
this for
one.
it. We need the Wordsworth editions. I mean, this is my battered ancient copy, but you need the Wordsworth editions version of Culpeper's Herbal because it's the only accurate, unedited, non-messed about with reprint. And in that, as you're describing, Ollie, it has this large section after the main herbal, which is missing from most other published works,
Which
which
is
talk
unique.
about the quote unquote energetics or traditional galenic attributions of
And
the
it doesn't
herbs.
take long. It goes through all the plants, hot and coldness and moist and
Yes,
dryness. But before that, it goes through the four properties in their four stages and tells you exactly what they are, and it's fascinating. So I definitely
yes.
recommend to read that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has a little, it's a concise primer on traditional Western so-called Galenic physiology as
Yes.
well, and Galenic physics, if you like, of or anatomy. So anyway, really interesting and fantastic question. Thank
Great
you. And
question.
just to throw in a bit of astrology because I realized we haven't traditionally bitter tastes where bitterness was associated with the planets Mars and secondly the Sun. So in the Western canon, often very bitter herbs are either solar or martial in their rulership. Um, People often get confused between bitter and sour. You'll often find people saying, "Oh, it's really bitter," when what they mean is sour, which is sort of acidic or very dry, and astringent, which is a Saturn quality. So,
Yes.
anyways,
Anyway,
that's it.
so that's great. So thank you so much, Marcos. And
No, thank you, Ollie, and thank you very much for that question, Amanita Woodrose. And we'd
yeah,
exhort
absolutely. And
you.
please bring on more questions.
Yes, exactly. If anyone has any more questions about
Don't
herbal stuff,
don't be shy
astrological
because
stuff,
a lot of people, I remember not asking this question for ages in my training, not wanting to appear that like, this sounds like really obvious, but like, why can't
but
don't
it
I
isn't.
know the
It's a source
answer?
of massive confusion to many people. So, hopefully, we have helped you with that rather than added to the confusion. So anyway, all right.
Brilliant. All right, till next time. Bye bye then.
Bye. Bye.